Please stand as you are able for the reading of God's Word. Today's reading is Psalm 95. O come, let us sing to the Lord. Let us make a joyful noise to the rock of our salvation. Let us come into his presence with thanksgiving. Let us make a joyful noise to him with songs of praise. For the Lord is a great God and a great King above all gods. In his hands are the depths of the earth. The heights of the mountains are also. The sea is his, for he made it, and the dry land for which his hands has formed. O come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For he is God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hand. Oh, that today you would listen to his voice, not harden your hearts as Meribah on the day of Messiah in the wilderness, when your ancestors tested me and put me through the proof, though they had seen my work. And 40 years I loathed that generation and said, they are a people whose heart go astray, and they do not regard my ways. Therefore in my anger I swore, they shall not enter my rest. Our second reading is Hebrews chapter 4, verses 1 through 11. Therefore, while promise of entering his rest is still open, let us take care that none of you should seem to have failed to reach it. For indeed the good news came to us as to them, but the message they heard did not benefit them, because they were not united by faith with those who listened. For we have believed are entering that rest, just as God said, as in my anger I swore they shall not enter my rest. Though his words were finished with that foundation of the world, for somewhere it speaks about the seventh day as follows. And God rested on the seventh day from all his works. And again in this place it says, they shall not enter my rest. Since therefore it remains open for some to enter, and for those who formerly received the good news failed to enter because of the disobedience, again he sets a certain day, today, saying that through David much later, in the words already quoted, today if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not speak later about another day. So then the Sabbath rest still remains for the people of God. For those who enter God's rest also rest from their labors as God did from his. Let us therefore make every effort to enter that rest, so that no one may fall through such disobedience as theirs. Please remain standing.
They shall not enter my rest, it says. Both of these scriptures, Psalm 95 and Hebrews, talk about entering into God's rest. Part of this references God's ultimate rest, which is resting with God in glory when this life is over. And part of the repeated emphasis on they shall not enter into my rest focused on the disobedience of the people of Israel. When you think about things like how they would sometimes turn away from God and blaspheme God, and yet at the same time in Hebrews, there's a phrase that says, my rest is still open. My rest is still available. So this week we're going to talk about rest, a little bit about Sabbath, and next week we'll talk a little bit about restoration and renewal. And part of that comes out of the idea of, well, it came out of my idea of vacation. And sometimes when kids start school, they have a little, a project or an essay, or for elementary kids, it's an art project or something that starts with what I did on my summer vacation. We went to Denver so that I wouldn't get to the end of summer and say the only thing I did on my summer vacation was move. Because moving is not vacation. We're still currently decorating the boxes that we don't want to unpack so that they look prettier. Rest rest is so important. And the Sabbath rest that God talks about, God gives us the example right away in Genesis, in the stories of creation. And on the seventh day, God rested. And the scriptures say things like, in 6 days you will complete your labors, and on the seventh day you will rest. People in our brothers and sisters in the Jewish faith and in the Jewish community, they observe Sabbath sometimes differently, and in some Jewish communities a little more strictly than we sometimes do, because they take to heart very literally this idea that Sabbath rest means to rest from work. That might mean for some Jewish communities that they're not doing any work from sundown Friday to sundown Saturday when they remember the Sabbath. They're not cooking, they're not cleaning, all the preparations are made so that they can rest. It's time for worship, it's time in community of faith, it's time with family. When we lived in Iowa, we lived in an area where there was a very large old order Amish community. They too take that idea of Sabbath rest very seriously, and they gather for worship on Sunday, and you kind of knew where they were gathering for worship in the Amish community because all the wagons and buggies would be at that farm. And you knew then that that family had made preparations to host their community in worship all of that week, cleaning and preparing food and getting everything ready, because they didn't farm on the Sabbath outside of making sure the animals just had what they needed. And you'd see the Amish families in their Sunday best, in the buggies out on the back roads. You'd see the Amish children out in the yard in their dress clothes and walking up and down the roads. And different communities recognize that Sabbath differently, and they recognize that idea of Sabbath rest differently. That idea of Sabbath rest is taking time and space apart from the routine daily labors and finding a place and time of rest, a place of time of worship, being in relationship with our God, being in fellowship and in relationship with one another, being in fellowship and in relationship with our families or our friends, trying to enjoy that time of rest. And yes, rest also means sleep or delighting in the bliss of an afternoon nap. I always think it's funny when I think about napping now, how I love an afternoon nap here and there. I mean, it's, you just, even just an hour, just laying down, just resting, with or without any music or anything, just taking it easy. And I remember how desperately my parents tried to get us to nap when we were little kids. And as a little kid, you're like, nap? I don't want to nap. I slept last night. I don't need to nap today. Napping is a waste of playtime. It's a waste of energy. And it's yada, yada, yada. And you look at kids now and you want to shake them and say, no, really, nap. Not because you're driving me nuts, but it's good for you, and it's good for all of us to rest. And sometimes vacation times are meant to be restful, restorative, and renewing. And how many of us have ever been on a vacation, planned a vacation, taken a vacation, that when you get home from vacation, you're like, now I need a vacation from vacation? Because sometimes when we look at vacations, and I've been guilty of this, ask my family, we pack everything we can to in a vacation. By God, if we're going to travel on vacation, we're going to see everything we can between here and there. And we're going to see everything we can while we're there. And we're going to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning. We're going to get on the first bus to the first tourist site. We're going to spend that time there. We're going to check all that stuff out. And then we're going to wonder why we get home that night or wherever we're staying, hotel, Airbnb, Vrbo, relatives, friends, whatever. And we're going to wonder, this vacation is killing me. Wait a minute, that's not the point of vacation. So this time we did it a little bit differently for my wife and I. We flew to Colorado late on a Wednesday evening. We had some anxiety because we hadn't flown in over 20 years, so we didn't want to end up in, some small TSA jail room at the O'Hare Airport because we forgot the wrong piece of ID or something. I did not help my wife's anxiety at all because I kind of procrastinated and I wasn't quite ready, and then I get frustrated with myself. And you wouldn't think getting frustrated with yourself gets anxious and frustrating for your spouse, but it does, because it just does. And so we got to O'Hare, going through security, got the shoes off, was ready to take off my belt, and they didn't ask me to take off my belt, and I'm like, well, I walked through the security thing. We were together the whole way, and then we got separated to check IDs and that kind of thing, and got to the one place, and of course we didn't have paper boarding passes. We had them on our phones, and you pull up the thing and you scan it, you put the face down on the thing and you do that. Well, then all of a sudden, it's not my name, it's her name, and it's kind of like, it's the one that it pulled up. Well, then you have to swipe. Okay, well, all right. The only security person that wasn't happy with us rolled her eyes at us when we didn't know to swipe. Well, that's fine. Everybody else was nice. Everybody was friendly, was helpful. I took 3 tablets with me because I hadn't finished my hospice charting, so I had to finish that in the airport. And I said, well, they can say, yep, you can put all 3 of them in the same basket. It's fine. Just lay them all flat. And everybody was great, very helpful. Plane was running on time, and then it wasn't. First it says, your incoming plane has arrived, but there's a technical issue. And then the next message says, something to do with maintaining the lavatory. And I'm like, yeah, fix that, please. Yeah, make sure that's working. So we got to Denver very late. Our son picked us up, went to bed. The next day is Thursday. He had to work, and his girlfriend, Kristen, had to work. And so Chris and I slept in late, found a place to get breakfast, took an Uber, had a nice breakfast. I said, what do you want to do now? She said, I kind of want to go back to the apartment and lay back down. Now, there was a part of me, this comes from my dad's side of the family, it's like, it's vacation. We need to go to a museum. We need to find something to do. But then there was the wiser, smarter part of me, who's been married for almost 29 years tomorrow, and said, go back to the apartment and lay down. And if you don't want to lay down, read your book or something, but leave your wife alone. We went back to the apartment, we both laid down, and we napped, we rested. And it was great. And I didn't miss going somewhere for nothing. But see, rest, we're called to this kind of deep Sabbath rest. Rest for our souls. Not just physical rest for the body, not just physical rest for the mind and for the heart to refresh and rejuvenate and be able to function a little more, but really the deep, abiding rest that Christ brings for us that says, it's okay. I've got this. Relax. Try for a little bit to let your worries go. Try for a little bit to let the stresses that you are enduring go.